Welcome to another episode of the Life Adventurous podcast. I'm Jeni, your host, and this is the place to be if you want to explore things all spiritual, where we go into the edges of spirituality. And of course, we've got to talk about travel and adventure and living life as a nomad and anything else in between. So we are right in the middle of a really fun nomad series. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube, this is the first video as part of the series. We've actually had a couple other episodes drop first. So the first episode as part of this little mini series is I shared what life has been like over the past 2 years. And so here on the YouTube channel, you will see a video of me and Jay talking about that. I actually have a solo episode where I talked about it independently. And then I also had one that went out as the second part of the series talking about what's holding you back from a nomad lifestyle. And then the next one was I was interviewing Jay and talking about nomadic mindset and how that it could apply to you, no matter if you're a nomad or not. So there's a lot of amazing gems in here. And today's episode has a video aspect to it because we have a guest on video. Sometimes me and Jay don't do the video thing. And I am so excited because the reason I wanted to bring April on today is because she lives a very different life as far as her like nomad life than Jay and I live, right? We're living in the Airbnbs, the furnished finders. I mean, you can even see like a bed in a place here in the background if you're on video. And she's been doing the RV life. And so I'm excited to explore with her a bit of like the nuances and differences. And even she's done a lot of spiritual work. So, of course, we're going to spend some time talking about that. So, April Sumner, we have a very similar background. This is so cool. So, April Sumner has a 20-year history in corporate America where she achieved a six-figure salary by the age of 34 by obsessing on her primary questions. How can I make this better? How can I be better? Those questions led her to save a mid-sized company over $10 million annually through incremental improvements. She now brings her experience to solopreneurship and is building a personal brand focused on the continuous improvement of personal well-being. She wants to help you let go of what's dragging you down, hear the calls of your heart, and fulfill them. She's in the process of designing a self-discovery journey and will offer intuitive guidance to assist. I jumped off the page real quick. So let's bring April on. April, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Yeah, so share a little bit about like whatever's on your heart. Like, who are you and why are you here? I don't know.
Oh my gosh, dropping the big questions right off the bat. Oh gosh. So where do we go with that one? I'll drop into like the 3D zone, who I think that I am. An explorer at heart. I have always been asking the questions of like you said in the introduction, about how I can make things better, how I can be better. And I really have a long-term vision for how I can help with the support of global well-being. So everything that I'm doing now on a personal basis is in preparation for this long-term vision of mine. And I would say I'm just very altruistic by nature. And yeah, uh, I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
Well, of course, we're going to be sharing a lot more because then my next question is like, I gave a little bit of it about the fact that you're living in an RV, but can you back up like to how you even got into nomad living? Like,
Yeah.
and even share a bit more about like what your lifestyle's like with nomad. Because like I said, it's very different than ours, but I'm sure there's a lot of similarities.
Yes. So, I spent a long time in corporate America and did a lot for that company and didn't receive the recognition like many of us go through, right? Giving, 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 and not seeing in return, just making money for somebody else. And maybe about halfway through my career, I started feeling the call of my heart and saying, I really want to do something more meaningful than this. I really want to be in a place where I'm appreciated and where what I do really feels like it matters.
Mm.
And so I began to kind of work towards that. But then there were some shifts in my life, of course, and I ended up staying in it much longer than I thought I would. And then we were acquired by the third investor company. And that was a really toxic leadership team. And things got much worse there. And I was given really the choice of go into a corporate sales position or leave. No interview, nothing. It didn't matter about my reputation with the organization before. And so I did it. I went into corporate sales and I thought, well, let me give it a shot. It was the only position that I had been resisting through my career. But things were so bad at that company that I just really couldn't um, do sales with integrity. And so I was very unsuccessful in sales because
Mm.
I just wouldn't trick people into buying a service that I thought was really subpar. And so it came to a point where it was really interesting because I was always like this type A, super efficient, work really, really hard, achieve all my goals. And then it's like everything started closing down on me. And like all my energy had drained out. And instead of being like this super efficient person, it was like I was just trudging through toxic
Mhm.
slime or mud. And I really was shocked at what was going on within me. And I started to do probably like 3 or 4 hours of self-reflective journaling a day to
Wow.
figure out what was going on
Mhm.
and where do I need to go from there. Soon after that, there was a split. They let me go. I wasn't making quota, so fine. Um, and I continued on with my self reflection, kind of not knowing where I would go from there because that was my whole career. You know, I started at the company when I was 19 years old.
Wow.
So um, all my identity was wrapped
Mhm.
up in that job
Mhm.
so much that I kind of didn't know who I was anymore after that or what I was going to do. I had an idea. I started a business, but there were a lot of things to figure out actually. And things in my life just started to become more clear through that journaling. And I realized that I didn't want to go back to corporate America. I didn't want the golden handcuffs. And so I was going to just go out on my own using the resources that I had available and just try something new, which meant that I needed to sell my huge house in Florida on the water. And then soon after that, I realized that my relationship, 7 year long relationship, was really actually toxic on both sides.
Mm.
Um, and that trying to get to resolution wasn't working. Communication just couldn't happen. And so I had to let go of my relationship. Um, and there being without the house, without the relationship, and kind of almost like a blank slate, I was like, all right, well, what's my next move here? I didn't really know, and I always wanted to travel the U.S. and I just thought, well, this is my opportunity, right? I have no chains to anything. So, and I have the resources to do it, so why not? Um, so I traded in my BMW and I got a Ford F-250 truck and I bought a fifth wheel trailer. So that's what I'm using. It's 25 foot long, 200 square feet. So I went from 3,200 square feet to 200 square feet, which was pretty crazy. And I had never driven a fifth wheel before.
Mhm.
So it was pretty scary, but that's how I ended up here. And I decided that I would spend that time trying to figure out what the next step was and figure myself out more because there was still a lot more work to be done.
Yeah. I think we met, if I remember right, based on you telling the story, because I haven't heard the whole story or I don't remember it in this way, is that I think we met either right before or right after you bought the truck.
It could be. Yeah, I remember it was very close to my leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
you
and I
were
left probably I think 3 months after that.
Okay, yeah, because you were testing out what it was like to drive and live in an RV, and I think that was unique. Because there's probably a lot of people that just jump into an RV and have never really tried tried it out, like we almost did. I don't know if I told you this, but we were in Fort Walton Beach, and I was like, "You know what? I'm sick of paying all this rent in these places. What if we just owned our own home and drove around?" So we went into Camping World, and we were just casually looking, and for me, I'm like, well, I don't want to pull a fifth wheel. I mean, here we are both women, but this is my own thing, right? Like, I'm like, I don't want to pull a fifth wheel on my own. That's a big thing to carry, to drive around. And then I don't know anything about an RV. And so I was looking at like a Class C, which is basically like a truck on wheels. I just learned these things, right? Like the whole terminology within the RV world. And when I went to the dealership and was looking, she was like, well, you don't want this. For the same price, you could get this big, huge Class A motorhome. And so I'm like, we tour the Class A. Of course, it's really nice. So much more room. We're like, oh, this is nice. And then the thing comes with, okay, well, you've got this huge motor coach. Now you have to pull your car if you want to get around town. So now I'm pulling something even longer. Anyways, we did try it on, and it was just like so much. So, what for you clicked and made sense? Like, why was this the right thing? And how did you even get comfortable with
Mhm.
a big rig?
Yeah. So I did a trial run for 3 months. I
Mhm.
rented an RV with one of my best friends, and we did a 3-month road trip, a Class C. That's what
Mhm.
we chose to, because I thought I wanted to get a Class C as well. And it taught me a lot. And I would recommend it to anybody who's considering the lifestyle who has not done a lot of RV travel, because it is a totally different way of being. And um, it really showed me that I could do it, but also that a Class C was not what I wanted to do. Because similar to your story about the motorhome, um, the Class C, I would find myself being parked in a campground and then going, oh, I want to go, out to eat dinner, but then I have to pack up everything, because everything has to be really tight and all put away your whole life. Everything has to be put away in order for you to move if it's a motorized RV. So I decided I didn't want a motorized RV. I wanted something that I would be able to just detach from and leave at a campsite. I didn't want to tow another vehicle because it just seemed like a lot of extra expense too, to have two motorized vehicles. So for me, I thought, well, I don't want to be traveling every few days. I want to be able to settle in. I was really needing a lot of solitude and space for my self reflection. And I really like to explore an area. So I thought that would really work out for me. So the tow behinds, I mean, all of the RVs have their advantages and different and disadvantages. So it's really a very personal decision. And the tow behinds for me, they don't offer you as much space compared to the length of your entire rig. And then there's a lot of sway that happens when you're driving on the road. And since I was doing it all by myself, I just thought, try to eliminate any possible problems
Mhm.
up front and just go with a fifth wheel. And before
Oh,
I got out on the road, I went on one, it's not really a test drive, but my uncle owned a flatbed, like fifth wheel trailer. And so he took me out and let me drive around a little bit and just kind of get the hang of it. I'd towed a boat before, like a 20-foot boat. Um, but it's a little different than driving a fifth wheel. And
mm,
so that was one of the hardest things, is knowing I was going out on my own. I was going to be alone. I was going to have to handle everything. And I had never driven a fifth wheel.
mhm.
So, and I didn't pick it up in Florida where I was at home base. I actually packed up all my stuff into a little U-Haul cargo trailer, drove to Oklahoma where my RV was being built, unpacked it at a U-Haul storage shed, waited for my fifth wheel to be finished, and then drove my fifth wheel to the storage shed and packed up my whole life in there. So it was
Oh,
quite the journey.
Yeah, I'd say so, and I didn't realize about the sway part with the fifth wheel, that a fifth wheel has less sway, because for
Mm,
us to make that change, it's like then buying a whole new car, and, like, it just it seems like a lot, and it's interesting, and I'm curious because of the different people I watch on YouTube who live in different things, whether it be vans or buses or whatever. I don't watch a lot of RV people, but I would think that there's similarities as I watch, and it seems like or an overlander like Ava Zubek, right? Like these people live in these cars or vehicle or whatever, and things go wrong. And it seems like the people that have these like have some level of mechanic ability. I don't know if that's necessary. Like, what has that been like for you on the road? Especially being
mm.
by yourself, because a lot of these people I watch are in like a couple relationship where there's two of them and someone is handy.
Yeah, and there's even less people less women on the road who are dragging a trailer behind them. There's
Mhm.
van lifers and car campers and stuff like that. But I actually have yet to meet a single woman who is dragging a trailer.
Really?
But I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
out there. We just haven't met them.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, I didn't have any mechanical ability, but I do believe that everything is figure outable.
Mhm.
And there are mobile RV techs all over the country, and they will come to you in many cases. So I just figured I would cross that bridge when I got there. It's kind of like, what if your car breaks down on the side of the road? You're not
Right.
a mechanic. You're not going to fix your car. I bought insurance, and my insurance will tow my whole rig
Mm.
if something happens and it can't be repaired on site. So, I did a lot of research to understand what could go wrong, how to prepare for that, and I probably over prepared. I bought more things than I really
Yeah,
needed.
yeah, yeah, totally. So, let me share some of the things I don't like about this lifestyle, and I'm curious what your perception is like living in an RV.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that staying in furnished places is I love that we're always in a new environment, but then one of the downsides I feel like is you never know what the bed's gonna be like or the
Mhm.
couch or some of the things. So, like, how do you feel about that? Because it's your same bed and your same couch, but then do you kinda get bored with that on always seeing the same thing inside.
I don't get bored with the same thing inside, but there
Uh-huh.
is still this element of the unknown. So I'm a vegetarian, and one thing that I've noticed is you're driving all across the country, the grocery stores that you had at home aren't in the other places. So now you're trying to figure out which grocery stores carry the kind of food that you want to buy, and some of them don't carry it at all. Uh,
Mhm.
so sometimes you just have to go without the things that you really like. And then it's, every town you're trying to figure out, all right, where do I go for this and where do I go for that? And so there's a lot of research involved.
Mhm. There is. Well, let me ask you this then. Are there certain things you don't like about the RV life?
Yes. Uh, so one thing that I don't like is that because I also am traveling alone. I think that this is very different when you have other people with you all the time. I've been mostly alone for my whole trip. For like the last 6 months, I've had someone with me. But in the beginning, there was this kind of loneliness that set in. Even though I was meeting people on the road, you're starting over in those friendships. And all of my really close friends were in Florida, and all of my family was in Florida. And so, you can talk to them remotely, but it's just not the same. So that's one of the things that I would say is a downside. Another thing is just finding good enough cell reception. So
Mm,
maybe you don't have that problem because you probably have
mhm,
Wi-Fi, great Wi-Fi at
mhm,
the Airbnbs. But I live primarily in national forests. Like 90% of the time, I'm off-grid camping, no hookups at all, and I have to just find a site that has good connection. And sometimes you just can't find it, which
mm,
means if I really need to do work that's internet heavy, I have to go into town and go to a coffee shop. And for me, I'm kind of spoiled on quiet space. So coffee shop is like, there's so much stuff going on, visually and audibly. And then, or you could go to the library if the library's got good Wi-Fi. But it's just one of those things. It's kind of a challenge. A lot of times, I don't want to go into town, and it's like 11, 20 miles into town sometimes, so there's that. And then also for me, I move with the weather. So because I can run my AC, but I have to run it off of a generator. So I just kind of move with the weather. And I've realized that weather is very, very different in some of these places than it is in Florida. Arizona can be really windy.
Hmm.
And it can just hail sometimes.
Okay.
Like when I first got out onto the road, and I went to Flagstaff, Arizona, and I just felt like God was just like ripping the band-aid off, because I had like the worst thunderstorm ever one day. I had like crazy 50-mile-per-hour winds one day. I had hail. This is all like in my first week of having the RV.
Yeah.
So it was pretty wild. Yeah,
Okay.
weather is crazy.
It's interesting because I can relate a little bit to what you're saying about national forest because we're in Pisgah National Forest right now. We don't have cell service, but we do have excellent Wi-Fi. And we literally, I feel like a lot of our journey has been very intuitively led, whether I've been aware of it or not.
Yeah.
Because we moved in. So the people who lived here before, they bought the house next door and they moved 5 days before we came in, which we knew. And they got new internet like a couple days prior because like this satellite internet or something became available out here because prior their internet
Mm.
they said like in the evenings it was hit or miss, you couldn't even send a picture to somebody, and that would have been really challenging for us. And like you were saying, right now we're 25 minutes into town, so if you are going to go work at a coffee shop, it's a commitment to get there.
Yeah, it
And
is.
so but we do have excellent Wi-Fi. So while I have SOS on my phone while we're here, it's, we have that. So that is something I would think that's an advantage to living this way. Okay,
Yes.
the last thing I want to bring up before we go into like some of the spiritual stuff and other like parts of this is what about washer and dryer? Because I know
Oh,
some RVs have it and some don't. So are you having to go to laundromats or what's your situation?
yeah, I have a very small RV. I have the smallest fifth wheel trailer that I could find, because I had never driven a trailer like this before, and I didn't want to get a long one, because there's a lot of places that you can't even park a long one.
Mhm.
So I felt it would give me more mobility and just be easier for me to handle. So I do not have a washer and dryer. I definitely go to the laundromat. But I had my RV built by this small little family owned company that has their own layouts, like standard layouts for builds, but then they will customize it however you want.
Hmm.
So I made some changes, so I have plenty of clothes storage area, probably more than I need really. And um, I probably only go to the laundromat every 2 weeks
Mm,
now.
okay.
So yeah,
Okay. So what's that like? Because this is something I've personally always wondered. Like, because I love having the washer and dryer in the place. So like it's hard for me to wrap my head around like actually having to go and sit there, which I know lots of people do, but I like having it here. So if the
yeah,
dog throws up, I can just put it straight in that kind of thing.
yeah. And I don't have any animals, so that might change things. Um, I always use my laundromat time to the fullest advantage that I can, right? So, last time I went to the laundromat, it was in the same plaza with Harbor Freight and an auto store, and I needed stuff from them. So, in the like 25 minutes that it took to do the wash, I went and did those errands, and then I came
Mm,
back, threw stuff in the dryer, took a call out in the truck so it wouldn't be so loud. And so I just make
make
the best of it.
That's usually how it works, right? You just make it work in this lifestyle. Like
Exactly. You've got to make a lot of things work.
so if you can go back, how long have you been on the road now? How long have you been living this lifestyle?
Next month it'll be 2 years.
Oh, we have really close anniversaries. I had a feeling because ours was May 4th for 2 years.
Mm,
So yeah, you're like right behind us the same time. That's so cool. So if you
yeah.
can look back, did you have any fears back then about getting into this?
My biggest fear was just driving the rig.
Yeah.
And I had so much anxiety when I first started driving it, but it really wore off pretty quickly. And I have actually had women tell me, and can I they've told me that, "Oh, you're such a badass." I don't know if I can say that word.
Yes, totally. You can say that.
um, I'm like, I'm not really such a badass. Like, it's really not that hard. Just because men are the ones that are normally doing it doesn't mean that a woman can't do it.
Mhm.
It's really not that hard. And I've set up the whole system so I can handle everything myself. I would say that I'm naturally a strong, like a muscular person. And so there are for sure some things that require a lot of strength that I think would be challenging for some women.
Mhm.
Um, like, but even those things, a lot of those things can be worked around. It's just kind of knowing where you're at, knowing your limits, and then figuring out how to make it work.
Right, finding a solution. Okay, so what
Mhm.
about now? Are there any fears now at this point, like where you're at or what's kinda next for you?
Right now, I'm fearing monsoon season in Flagstaff. 'Cause
Oh, God, no.
yeah, I've got a four-wheel drive truck, but the mud here is crazy. So I've been thinking over the last few days, like once it hits July, what's it going to be like here? I've never been through a monsoon season, so that's it. The weather,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, don't want to be somewhere in the winter where you can get really bad hail. Winds can totally blow your trailer right over. There's
Mhm.
crazy videos on YouTube about
Oh,
whole semi trucks just being blown over,
wow.
and RVs too.
Mhm.
So wind can be a real problem. But I would say I've had to come up across so many fears while I've been on the road that this lifestyle doesn't scare me so much. Um, my fears are like of a different nature now.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking back to, like, if I had any fears that I was aware of, because I feel like as we go through things, it's like it's scary in the moment, and then you kind of forget that it was even a fear sometimes because you learn
Yeah.
how to transcend it pretty quickly. I mean, I think my big fear overall has mostly been, like, fear of the unknown. What does that
Oh,
place
yeah.
like? Will I find a spot? Will it be in my budget? Will it be safe? Will it be, like, normal like, I say normal, I don't like, normal things like that, that I quickly realized that for the most part, for me, have been mostly irrational. Like, it's just me overthinking things.
And you remind me too of a fear that I had in the beginning that I don't have now, and that is about being safe. And the
Mm,
number one question that people ask me is, "Do you have a gun?"
mm,
And I have only ever run into one person that spooked me, and nothing ever happened. He never actually did anything. So that might have just been in my head. Um, Other than that, everyone, RVers are really friendly. Campers are super friendly and helpful. And I have this hallucination now that you're actually less safe in a city where all of the murders and burglaries and everything are happening than out in a forest.
yeah,
So, I
yeah,
mean, things do happen. I mean, people do get killed and people do get robbed and stuff, but the percentage of that compared to what's going on in a city is so different.
yeah. I would have to agree to a certain extent because I feel like I don't know. I know we've been in a lot of different places, but I'm not any less safe or more safe or whatever than I was living in St. Pete, Florida. Like, what's the
Yeah.
difference?
Yeah.
And in some places, I'm even more remote. Like, some places we've stayed, nobody really locks their cars or their homes or anything. And like you said, things can still happen. But we've stayed a lot of places where people are like, yeah, the keys are there, but we usually don't lock everything.
Yeah.
It's like a whole different vibe, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and for people who are on this path and who are really like tuned into their intuition, if you are following your intuition, you're going to be so much safer. I've
Yeah.
definitely come into campsites and felt, to me, there is a difference between fear, like false evidence appearing real, and the intuitive feeling of near and present danger. And
Mhm.
so when I get that feeling of danger, I leave. I won't just force myself into that camp spot. I will go somewhere else. And I think there's a lot to say for that.
Mhm. Yeah, and since you brought up the intuition, like, that was, like, the direction I really wanted to dive into next is, like, I know that you've had this huge spiritual awakening on this huge journey. So, can you share a bit about that? Like, what has this been like? What have you been diving into? I don't know what you're willing or not willing to share, but I know you've been, even like we haven't talked in a while, like face to face, I can tell you're in a different space now than last time we talked.
Yes, I am. And I would say for me, there's been like multiple awakenings. And the
Mm,
first awakening that I had was just sort of an introduction to energy and intuition and all of this healing work that goes on. And not the work that we do when we reflect it within the mind on our situation, but miraculous healings
mhm,
and Reiki and stuff like that. So that was my first introduction. And I went into yoga and well, I went through the yoga teacher training more for self healing, not because I wanted to be a yoga teacher. And then some years went by, and back in 2019, I had this other awakening, and that was it was started with that split with corporate, and a little bit before that split, when I started doing all that self-reflective
mhm,
journaling, because there was one thing in my life that just escaped me. I was able to accomplish every single goal that I ever had. And there was this one that I just couldn't make work. And that was being at the weight that I wanted to be at.
mhm,
Um, and I finally sat down and like really analyzed what is going on here. Why can't I just stick to being healthy? And um, I realized that I was distracting myself with food and wine and many other things, busyness.
mhm.
I was a master of distraction.
Yeah.
And but when you're distracting yourself with like food and wine, no wonder it's hard to keep the weight off, right?
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
so I really started digging into that more and understanding my feelings and what they were trying to tell me. Um, what needs were not being met, and what did I really want, and then doing the work to take care of my own needs, which is self-love, right?
mhm,
I had a self-love deficiency.
mhm,
So that was my second awakening, was to begin understanding what it really meant to love yourself, because so many people talk about it in like these ambiguous ways. I just never got it. Like go take a bubble bath, whatever. That didn't make any sense to me. And sure, that can be part of it, but that's not the deepest part of it. And so I went really deep, and um, it's been a real eye opener.
mhm. Do you feel that being on this nomad journey has helped that, or do you feel like you still would have been able to go through it at a, in a house somewhere, or is there any correlation between the 2 for you?
Well, I knew when I went out on this journey that it was going to be a soul journey, and that I was going to continue, because I was doing at that point I was doing like 3 to 5 hours of journaling a day.
Mhm,
And it seems like so much, but it was going by so fast, and I wasn't working at the
mhm,
time. So I had the time, and I was just investing in myself, because the weird thing about problems is when you have a lot of problems, they just follow you around wherever you go. And I didn't want to have them. So I knew that the problem was me. Everywhere I was going, the problem was there. And so I was the one constant. Um,
mhm,
so, yeah, I would say people can still do it at home, if they're in, bricks and sticks. But going out on the road, I would say added, um, I guess, other opportunities for me to meet different people and experience um, different things that I wouldn't have experienced at home.
mhm.
Um, well, maybe I wouldn't have. Maybe I would have met the same kind of people, right? The universe works in mysterious ways. So you're going to get the teacher when you're ready for the teacher.
Yeah. In last week's episode, Jay and I were talking about this in like, you know, a nomad adventure can bring a lot of amazingness because you're in lots of different situations, scenarios, environments, different cultures, different people, different thoughts, different beliefs, and etc. And we were talking about, because he talks about nomadic mindset, which is KNOMADIC. And it's like anybody can have a nomadic mindset, because it's like, how can you always be in this place of growing and learning, which you can do if you live in an area. You can still have access if you're not moving around to being on this expansive journey. Because like you said, with the universe working in all these ways, and at the same time, how can you either bring culture to you by meeting different types of people in your area, or, like, how can you just expand and be exposed to stuff? Because that's really for me, my personal my personal opinion in life and journey is like, there's nothing like getting on the road and just being in so many different environments. Because I've said this a million times, you're in northern Idaho where there's a very specific way of thinking, or you can be in, San Francisco where there's a very opposite way of thinking, as far as like what the environment is. And we just kind of vibe with a lot of them. I mean, there's environments we like better than others, of course. But I personally enjoy kind of hearing people's perspective, especially when it's very different than mine, to be like, why do they think that? Like, what has brought them to this being their perspective? Now, with you staying in forests, like, I know there's the RV and the camping community. Like, how has that worked with you as you've moved around and been exposed to different people?
Yeah, I mean, you just meet different people who are camping next to you, or you go to the store and strike up a conversation, or go to a dance, some kind of community meetup, something like that, and you just meet people. But you raise a really good point, because I feel like I was a little spoiled by living in Central Florida. It's a mecca for people to migrate to, so you meet all sorts of different people. But there are lots of places in the country where the the population is pretty much of the same mindset, it seems, same culture, rather than this melting pot of cultures. So you might be a little bit more limited there. And the other thing that I would say about just kind of getting out is, I have heard so many people say, I'll be like, gosh, you live next to this beach? It's so amazing. And they're like, yeah, but I never go to it. When you are living in a place, I just find that a lot of people take for granted what's around them. I did when I was in Central Florida. There's so many things, museums I never went to, gardens I never explored, just so many different things. And you have no idea who you're going to meet there, or what kind of conversations are going to happen, or what you're going to see or start to become interested in, just by exposing yourself to something new, which is actually really good for the brain. And especially as you age, it helps with cognitive function. So
yeah, I find myself, one of the things I like about this lifestyle is the ever changing environment that we're in. And from an energetic standpoint, like the last place we stayed, the energy there was just very heavy, and granted, we were also living in a basement, and it wasn't dark and dingy, but like in a basement, we were like in the cellar. We were in someone's like basement apartment. So we were very much in their space and the layout. We came to this space and it was like so exciting. I was like, oh my God, it's so different. And I think you really start to recognize and realize the power of different environments. And I would say, if you aren't traveling, how can you switch up your environment in your house? How can you get rid of things? How can you declutter? How can you let go of things that are maybe from relationships past that no longer have value, that are just energetically still connected to you? How can you rearrange your room? How can you maybe say, like, I'm here in a spare bedroom that's also an office. Well, like, what if it doesn't have to be a spare bedroom? What if this is instead, a workout room or an oasis for you, or whatever? Like, why have a bed if nobody ever visits you because you're supposed to have a bed? Like, how can you really switch up your environment?
yeah.
Paint the walls. I can think of a million things if you're not like moving around in this way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would agree with you. Like, if you live in Kansas and all you want is to be near the ocean, but you can't be near the ocean, they've got wall decals for that. Just, you can design a whole room that's just like being in the ocean, and play ocean music. But the energy of your home is incredibly important. And decluttering is so important because things do carry energy, and they also carry memory, for you. So a lot of people don't want to let go of things because it causes them to remember something that it's just sentimental to them. Um, but a lot of those things would actually serve you if you did let them go.
Mhm.
Take a picture. I tell people all the time, you don't want to let your stuff go because it brings up a memory. Take a picture, put it in a file. I have a file. These are things that I used to own. And if I ever want to go look at those things, they're there. And the picture is going to bring up the same memory as holding the thing in my hand.
Mhm.
So,
When it's
yeah.
you bring that up, and it had me think back to where you said earlier on, you went from 3,200 to 200.
Mm.
Do you have a storage unit with stuff, or like you have all your stuff? You just literally.
So the initial move in here, I did have a lot of stuff at my mom's house.
Mhm.
I saved basically a studio apartment worth of stuff, and because I wasn't sure, even though I did a 3 month trial run, most RVers actually give up this lifestyle after the first year. So,
Wow.
mhm, because it's so different, and a lot of people, you just can't understand what it's like until you actually live it. You can watch as many YouTube videos as you want, but until you actually live this life, you can't fully get it. And it's a very personal thing to you and to what you need and what you want. So I did that as kind of like my backup plan, keeping that on my mom's. And then um, things happened in my family. My great or my grandmother passed away, and my great grandmother had passed just prior to that, and my grandmother owned that house. So a lot of things started rushing into my mom's life, and my mom needed more space for more like heirloom type things. And so I went back in December and um, went through another downsizing and got rid of almost everything that I had at her house. And I think the only thing that I really, there's just a couple of things that I have to have. And if
Mhm.
something were to happen and she couldn't have the house, I'd buy a storage unit, right? Like the
Mhm.
back seat of my truck is at her house. All of my genealogy paperwork and stuff like that is at her house, but
Mhm.
everything else could go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because we have a 5 by 5 storage back in Tampa Bay, and originally, similar to you, we didn't keep a lot of furniture, like you had a studio apartment, but we kept, like extra dishes and things and a blow up bed and things that would be practical had we stopped sooner to at least get us back going, and then we could get stuff off Facebook Marketplace or thrift stores or whatever. And we went back and no we were back there in November, and it was like half this stuff. Now, if we had a home, right? Like we have a Sonos system in there, and like Jay has his guitars that we chose not to bring along with us because of just all the banging around. He wanted to preserve them. So if we had a home, that's those things would definitely be in the home, but most of it, like we didn't even go through everything, but most of it's kind of like I haven't touched it in 2 years. What do I really need it? And the reason we did a storage unit is because we didn't have somebody's like home or something to
Yeah.
put it in. So we ended up having to do the storage unit. And also, we almost put it in a family member's home, but also knowing that at any moment that family member could be like, I want this space, get it
Yeah.
out. And we were like,
Mhm.
we don't really want to have to like rush back to move our stuff. We'll just keep it in the storage unit. So it's definitely, you just realize, and I think too, living with less stuff, because I'd be curious. We probably have a similar amount of things to you. Just the things we have are maybe different than the things you have because everything for us has to fit in our car. Um,
Mm.
our SU, we have like a Chevy Traverse. So we have a 3-row SUV. So everything's got to fit back there. Um, so we would have different things because you already have some of this in your RV, but like we carry um, like a projector and a projector screen. And we carry, even here, we've got, oh, the wrong way. That way? I don't know how to show it. There we go. We got lights. We have lights, we have just different things, a printer, we have different things. So I mean, like that takes up a lot of this, but we just sold our kayak because we weren't really using it. So that freed up more space in the car. So it's just, I don't know. I'm sure we probably carry a lot of the same types, amount of stuff, I would think. You're just actually can get packed in places.
Yeah, I have a ton of stuff. I don't know that it would all fit in a drawers. Um, because I mean, I do have a lot more space than you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's one thing that I found, and this is with a lot of people, is you have the space and you tend to fill it up with
Yes.
stuff. And I have way too much stuff on board right now, because even though I went through the downsizing at my mom's, there were a lot of things like I used to have, well, I still have actually, like this huge jewelry collection, and like just all of these different things that I didn't have time to necessarily sell at my mom's. So I'm in the process of, you know, selling that and getting things ready to sell now. So I can clear more space from my RV. And I'm actually interested in downsizing again and going to a truck camper.
Really?
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So, but that would take a lot. And
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure if I'm not sure when I'm going to be ready for that step, if I'll ever be ready for it, but it's definitely of interest because it is a big rig to drag around, you
Yeah.
know, and when you do have a truck camper, you can still drop it off somewhere if you want, but otherwise you can get into like any parking spot in the forest that you want.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, one of the questions I was curious is like, what's next for you? So you're hitting 2 years coming up here soon. Like, what's next?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I've been asking myself that question actually the last couple of days as it pertains to my nomadic journey.
Hmm.
Um, but I have gotten very heads down into building a personal brand and helping other people in the way that I feel is most aligned with me. And so I'm doing a lot less exploring outside and a lot more computer work. And
Hmm.
so I've been kind of wondering, like, does this lifestyle really make sense for me going forward? Like, how much longer am I going to do this? So we'll see. It's kind of up in the air right now.
Hmm. It's interesting because we have a different perspective on that because we love this lifestyle and we're going to continue going. And when
Mhm.
we thought about what's next, it was kind of like, well, how can we do things differently? Because I feel like it's easy to get stuck or get comfortable in the same types of cycles. Even though there is a lot of change and moving locations and different spots, there still is a relative amount of things that are similar that
Yeah.
you can just kind of put on what is that called? Like auto, like,
Autopilot
yeah,
routines. Yeah,
yeah,
you get
kinda,
into routines.
and we were kind of asking like, what would we maybe want to do differently? Is
Hmm.
it maybe we're staying in different types of places or different types of towns, or is it maybe the activities that we are doing in our spare time are different? We've been exploring that, and we will eventually go international. But we do have a senior doggy, so once he
Um,
crosses the doggy rainbow, that's something. Because then we have this little guy back here, and so he'll be a lot easier to fly with, but our other guy's 60 pounds. So traveling with him. So, it's interesting because I see what you're saying, where like as your life ebbs and flows,
mhm.
so let me just kind of throw this out there, right? So you're like, I don't know if this lifestyle you're still exploring. So then what if you then go, okay, well, I'm going to go stay in furnished places instead. So I ditched the RV idea. I get the groundingness in a home. I don't
Mhm.
know, just curious. Like, would you switch style or would you just pull out completely?
I thought about switching styles, and
Mhm.
then because I'm such a wimp when it comes to winter weather, you know, I'm a seventh generation Floridian, so I've got like sunshine in my blood, and snow is like kryptonite. I like it every once in a while. It's pretty
Mhm.
if you go for a weekend.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's just not a life I really care to expose myself to long term. So I have thought about, you know, staying in a place for like 3 months at a time, and you know,
Mhm.
333, you know, or 4 months at a time,
Yeah.
um, and moving around that way. I do believe long term that my move is going to be into like an off grid, either community or even a single homestead. I'd love to get into that lifestyle of being more self-sufficient
Mhm.
than I am now.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it feels like, you know, there's going to be something in between.
Yeah.
And one cool thing about being a nomad too is I mean, some people are so scared about doing it, but it's not like you have to marry it. It's not like you have to do it forever. You
Mhm.
can just go and do it for a few months or a year or 5 years. And then whenever the energy shifts, like it might be shifting for me now, we'll see, then you just change
Mhm.
what you're doing. And one thing that I have discovered is, even though I miss my people in Florida, I don't feel like I'll ever really live in Florida again. I'm not, gonna say it would never happen, because I do
Mhm.
follow spirit, but it just doesn't feel like my place. Like, and when I'm in Sedona, Arizona, that feels like home to me.
Mm.
I feel like I belong there. There's just something about it. So when you do go nomad, one benefit of it is that you get to discover all of these different areas, places you'd never been to before,
Yeah.
and you would have never thought of moving to before. But now this whole other realm of opportunities and possibilities opens up before you.
So true. So true. There's a I don't know for sure if it's like a modular unit or if it's like an RV build out or a trailer. I'm not sure exactly the proper name, but there's like a small little campground here. And I say that because some of them have an RV and then like they've built out an attachment to it, but everything is permanently there. You know,
Oh,
nothing
right, right, right.
moving. It's like
Mhm.
one of those. And there's a modular or something that's for sale in this little community that's like a half a mile down. And it's only 85,000. And like we're not going to do it, but like the idea crossed the mind where it's like, huh, I don't think I'd want to. And this speaks into like it doesn't have to be permanent. It was like, would we be willing to jump on an opportunity like that, live here, wherever it was, temporarily, right? Live in it for a bit, whether it needs fixing up, don't know. I didn't tour it, or like get it established and then maybe rent it out, right? So like who's to say you couldn't just kind of like you said, like you just learn about things that are just things aren't as concrete as I thought they were before.
Yeah.
Or
Well, we're all kind of, sorry,
no, it's okay.
we're all kind of conditioned as children into believing that we're meant to live a certain lifestyle, right?
Mhm.
And we're supposed to live a certain life. You go to school for this many years, and then if you're smart, you'll go to college and get, the best paying job that you can. And then you'll buy a house, right? Everybody buys a house, and then they get married and they have kids, and they work and work and work and work. And then if you live to retirement, you finally get to stop and live your life. Um, that's what we're basically brainwashed to believe that life should be like, right?
Mhm.
But there's so many different variations out there. It's amazing.
So what like words of wisdom or advice would you give to somebody who's considering this type of lifestyle?
I would say you really got to know why you're doing it. A lot of people do it because they see all the Instagram photos and the cool YouTube videos, and everything looks like a dream life. And oh my gosh, if I could just do that, everything in my life would be great. And it becomes like sort of this escape. They want to escape from the life that they're living right now and go do this other life. But and that works for some people. It does work for some people. Um, but it doesn't work for a lot of people. And like I said, most RVers quit after the first year because it's a very different kind of lifestyle. Having like temporary local friends all the time is something that a lot of people don't handle very well, or they don't want. They want that continuity, they want the depth that the in-person relating provides them. So I would say you've got to know why you're doing it, um, and know what you're getting into as much as possible too. Do your research. Don't just, have the idea and then just go off and do it like on
Mhm.
impulse. It's very challenging. I'd say yours is a lot less challenging to get into. If I were going to talk to somebody about this, I would say try it out first. I did the RV trial run. but somebody could just as easily do what you're doing and not have to get rid of their whole life in order to do it. Just live out of your car, even if you're doing it for a week and you move to just a few places, or you take off a month or something like that, and see if that's something that really suits you. For me, I knew this was going to be a soul journey, and
Mhm.
I have always been an explorer. And I moved around, like, I moved 23 times by the time I was 23 years old.
Wow.
So moving was something that I'm just used to, and if
Mhm.
I stay in one spot for too many years, I start getting the itch to
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
right? So know your why. If you don't have a big why behind doing this kind of a lifestyle, you think you're just going to escape your troubles by going out onto the road, you are mistaken.
Mhm.
It's going to be really frustrating after a while to realize that your trouble just followed you where you went. If you're not doing the inner work,
Yeah.
then the problem is going to just still be there.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the personal brand that you're building and how you want to help people listen to the call of their heart and follow their intuition and design their own journey and help them. Are you wanting to help people specifically like with nomad stuff, or like what are you wanting to do? What is the
Mhm.
or what
So,
are you doing? Maybe you're
the
already doing.
I actually learned about the concept of a personal brand from Dan Coe.
Mhm.
And what he is basically teaching other people is that whatever you have done in your life is of value to others. And you don't have to be an expert. Like, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a professor at some university or anything. That doesn't mean I can't teach. It doesn't mean that I can't help people through their issues, right? You just need to know a little bit more than some other people and be able to help move them along. And the personal brand really allows you to focus on those things that are of most interest to you to talk about and to work with. And for me, I have always wanted to help people, and I have always helped people. Even when I was in that career in corporate, I was doing personal development or learning about business and success and happiness, and constantly like teaching my friends about what
Mhm.
I was learning or trying to tell my family about what I was learning. So it just kind of came naturally to me. And what I'm focused on now is kind of like looking at where I was a few years ago, and that whole self-love deficiency that I had, and what was my process for getting me here. I worked on forgiveness a ton. I mean, I put in so many hours on forgiveness and
Mhm.
self-reflective work. And I built a whole process and kind of like this journal template around it. And it was so powerful to me that I want to share that with other people, because what we haven't let go of, and it doesn't mean that the person isn't responsible for it anymore. Actually, like saying to just let go rather than forgive. Um, it's about you. Forgiveness is about you and about letting go of all of that negativity that's draining your life force, and weighing you down and creating toxicity in your life. And also, that could be your job. It could be something you're resenting someone else for. It could be a relationship that you have. It could be so many different things. It's different for everyone. But so that's what I want to sort of start with, is helping people to let go of the weight that they're carrying so that they can be uplifted. And tuning into their heart is part of that reflective process of, how do I feel? Why do I feel this way? Is this a trigger from the past that needs to be healed? Or is this something really that's happening presently and I need to do something about it? Is there some unwritten boundary, unspoken boundary that's being crossed here that's just not okay? And I've just been putting up with it and I need to do something about it because that's what I need. Or have I always wanted to go travel the US and I'm just forcing myself to stay in Kansas because that's what my parents tell me I need to do?
Mhm.
Um, so, listening to your heart and then taking action is something that just doesn't come naturally for a lot of people. We're not taught that in school. And I want to help people with that, because I feel like when more people have their energy returned to them and their cup is overflowing, right, they can pour into other people. We have serious issues going on around the globe right now. There's like 25,000 people that die of starvation
Mm,
every day. And there is an abundance of resources that this shouldn't be happening. The fact that it's happening to me is atrocious. And it just points to the fact that as a global collective, um, we don't have enough people who are operating from their heart and,
mhm.
heart forward. And so the more people who can come back to their heart and then pour back out into the world, the greater difference that there will be. And I have some other ideas for that in the future as well, but that's the starting point for me.
I love it. Are you going to be how are you going to be doing this? Is this coaching, classes, speaking? Like what are you wanting? Journals? Like what is the
Hmm.
format? What is the vehicle? Here we go. What is the vehicle that you're going to be driving in, or vehicles?
So it's something that um, I think you know Abraham Hicks, right?
Mhm,
There's this great analogy about, like, you're going to California, but when you get onto like Google Maps and you put in the directions to LA, Google Maps doesn't give you every single direction of how you're going to get to LA. It gives you the next turn. It's
mhm,
like it's giving you the next best action to take. And then if you don't take that turn, it reroutes you. Make a U-turn, and so I have really had to surrender in my life the hows of all of this and just be comfortable in the discomfort of the unknown, and just kind
mhm.
of get used to the fact that I don't know what the whole journey is. And even if I did have a plan, the universe is probably going to change it. So right now, right now, what I'm working on is actually building a journey. And I'm not sure if the format will be like an email course or if it's going to be a workbook or both, but it will have the option of a guidance along the way if somebody gets stuck or they just want to talk. Um,
Mhm,
I I don't. It's kind of like coaching, but not, because for me, this deep work is not about getting to, some goal. It's not like corporate.
mhm,
It requires a certain gentleness, and that's something that's kind of hard to find
mhm.
out there. You can find it in your friends, but as a service, if you have friends like that, and a lot of people don't,
Right,
they
right.
don't have the tribe. So that's what I want to offer to people. And speaking may also come. There's so many different things that could come out of it, but I'm just kind of like taking the next best step.
Yeah, and even some things that just dropped in, whether you do them or not is completely up to you, but just,
Mhm,
like a little mini retreat, whether it be online or in
mhm,
person, because then you can facilitate and give the space to dive into those things and demonstrate what it could be like to be different and not be so go, 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 let's hit this goal, where it
yeah.
gives it space to breathe.
Hmm.
And I actually I could totally see you doing this. Is I just went through someone's free online 3-day mini retreat, and I'm sure she had things on the back end that she used, but as far as like a consumer, it was an hour 15 each day that led
Hmm.
us through an experience, and I personally was shocked at how powerful it was, because so many people marketing and this retreat and jump into my summit. I'm just so like about all of that. That I knew she was spiritual, and I was already drawn to her because the way I'm choosing people and things is very different than I did in the past, but I still have some, like, "Nah, whatever, this is bullshit," type thing. So I jumped into
Yeah.
her 3-day retreat, and I was like, "Oh, wow, that was actually pretty profound."
Hmm.
And that was just, like, the free experience, and I didn't have to be there 'cause she's based out of Amsterdam. She probably recorded it a year ago, and here I am going through it. So it really helped me to understand, like, wow, like you said, there are people out there who are doing things like what you're talking about and what we're talking about, but, like, where do you find them,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. I mean, they come into your awareness when you need them, right? And so I'm on Twitter all the time now. And it's funny because I have a background in product development and product management, right? And so like these core fundamentals of creating a new product, like know your target audience, and like there's so many different things. And sure, I have my target audience lined up, who I feel like I'm speaking to. But then when I go on Twitter and talk about these things, there are a lot of people that pop in that I did not expect.
Mm.
And so I am allowing my ideas to be more expansive and inclusive, than what my original idea was. And just trying to fit into that box because I thought
Mhm.
that was the best thing to
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah, totally makes sense. So if someone is like, I love April, I love what's going on, and they want to continue on this journey with you, where, I mean, you mentioned Twitter, but like,
Mhm.
is that the only place? Are you hanging out other places or what do you got going on?
Twitter is my main place right now. You can find me at Twitter at the April Renee, and I think it's down there at the bottom of the screen.
Mhm.
I will have a website coming soon, and then probably a newsletter, either newsletter or email course,
Okay,
coming after that. So if they go to my profile on Twitter, I have my link tree there so they can see like how to reach out to me in other ways.
cool. Hey, I love that. I love that. Um, and I'm not on Twitter. So do you know your link tree off the top of your head? Like what
Oh,
their slash is? And I'm not trying to put you
um,
on the spot, but I was like, "Ooh, what if I don't know how to get to you on Twitter because I don't have Twitter?"
I am the April Renee on Linktree as well. Let me.
The April
It's Linktree/April.Sumner,
ah,
and it's Sumner with an N. With an N. My parents were not cruel enough to name me a month and a season, so a lot of people get tricked by that one.
okay,
And then if you want to go to my website now, I do have just a splash page, um, for that it's coming soon, but you can sign up at theaprilrenee.com, and then I will send an email once the website actually launches, and then there'll be more information to come from there.
oh, cute. I was
Yeah.
pulling it up as you were saying. So, yeah, we've got that. Let's see. Let me pop back over to the screen. Got the link tree on there, and let me add this. So the April Renee, Renee's with two E's. So for
Yes.
anybody listening on the podcast, and then I'll throw it up on the screen for like the video portion of it. So cool. Is there anything else that you want to share that you feel like we maybe didn't cover, like a last parting, like anything that you feel like is like on your heart that you want to share before we close up?
Um, One thing that I was thinking about prior to coming on is just one of my biggest lessons through my spiritual journey is that ignoring your feelings doesn't make things easier in the long run. It always comes back around, and it may be subtle and hiding underneath like it was for me. I was so numb to things, I didn't realize like what was going on. But it's so important to take care of your feelings as they come up, or as soon as you can, and before too much momentum gets going with it. If you stay in a toxic situation for a day, that's a different thing than staying in it for 7 years.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so do the work.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I'm so grateful that you took the time because I know when we were scheduling this, you're like, "Well, if I've got good service, I'm in. We will make it
Mhm.
work." So I'm glad that you had the time and you were able to pull away from the forest to come hang out with all of us.
Yeah, you're really welcome. It was great being here. I'm still in the forest, just
Ooh,
inside.
that's awesome. Well, we will see you guys on the next episode, and yeah, come join the nomad stuff with us if you want. All right, guys, see you later.